Welcome to Rutgers Around the World, a special 6-episode series celebrating the university's international connections with the global community. We bring you this program as part of our 250th anniversary celebration. Hi, I'm Gabriella Millian.
And I'm Bruno Ferreira. Rutgers maintains these relationships through its Gaia Centers. Gaia stands for Global Advancement and International Affairs. In previous episodes, we've been exploring Rutgers' past and present ties.
But in this episode, we're looking forward at how these collaborations are shaping our future.
We recently had the opportunity to talk with Madison Little, a 2016 Rutgers grad whose achievements are already receiving recognition from some pretty big names.
Look at somebody like Madison Little, who grew up dealing with some health issues and started wondering what his care would have been like if he lived someplace else. And so here at Rutgers, he took charge of a student nonprofit and worked with folks in Australia and Cambodia and Uganda to address the AIDS epidemic.
Madison, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, how did it feel getting a shout out from the President of the United States at commencement?
It was so amazing, and not just to have my work recognized as an undergraduate, but our whole generation's movement for global health equity and the strides that we're making together as young people to create a more equitable world.
And tell us about your work with GlobeMed.
GlobeMed is a really exciting organization. It premises on the idea that we're not doctors or nurses or developmental economists, but the fact that we are students and that we have a quintessential role to play in global health. And that being in a university setting, it is such a unique experience to be in where we have such knowledge-based and financial resources right at our fingertips that we can really capitalize on for social good. So we tried to couple this with a new approach to global health, which is really working in partnerships with communities to empower them as well as to empower ourselves and to create mutual efforts in having critical dialogue about how we can substantially improve global health. So for this, we've partnered with 2 organizations, one in Cambodia to work on HIV prevention efforts, and another in rural Uganda to work in the intersection of education, healthcare, and microfinance. And all of these have been really amazing to see the impact that we as students can have across the nation in using our education outside of the classroom while we're still in university. We want to be able to have an impact, not wait the 4 years to be able to improve what we're learning how to improve.
And how are you working to shape the right to healthcare?
So for that, one of the really exciting ways that young people are mobilizing has been through the AIDS response. And having worked in Australia, I worked with the Melbourne Youth Force, and in that platform, it brought together young people from around the world to create a global youth advocacy agenda. And we structured our work over 4 key themes: treat, reform, educate, and love. And that these 4 pillars all encompass what we believe as critical to ending the AIDS epidemic among our generation, which for adolescents aged 10 to 19 is the #1 killer of adolescents in Africa and #2 globally. So we're really in a unique position where we have a great idea about what we need to do to change the trajectory of the AIDS epidemic, and it's mobilizing our voices to have one coherent message around the world.
And building off of all of your amazing experiences, what are your future plans?
So I'm headed to Oxford University in the fall to study for a master's in evidence-based social intervention and policy evaluation. And one of the most crucial things that I've thought about and learned about in global health work is the impact that policy has on health. That before we can even look at any kind of sustainable intervention, that we need to change the policy environment.
Madison, we wish you the best of luck in all your efforts. You're doing amazing work. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to seeing what Madison accomplishes in the future.
So am I. And now, let's take a look at Rutgers' ties with Iran. Rutgers was recently invited to join a select group of universities on a tour of institutes of higher learning in Iran. Undergraduate student and reporter Aki Gaines has more.
Thanks, Gabriella. The pursuit of learning is the common ground we all stand on, and the university tour just scratches the surface.
We're developing relationships with countries that have been isolated from the United States, such as Iran.
As the United States and Iran enter a new era of bilateral relations, Rutgers is at the forefront of promoting academic collaboration between the 2 countries. Rutgers attracts graduate students and faculty from Iran each year.
We very often host Iranian Fulbright or visiting faculty. We have affiliate faculty from Iran in the Center for Middle Eastern Studies from time to time. I myself conduct research on minority languages in Iran, and I know some of my faculty colleagues do as well.
We have at least 7 scholars from Iran, and out of those, at least 3 are females. Hopefully, with these doors opening and more scholars, visiting Rutgers or other institutions in the U.S., those relationships will create better partnerships, better understanding between the 2 countries, better democracy, hopefully, looking forward.
The Rutgers Gaia Centers aim to take this relationship to the next level.
The Gaia Centers helps initiate projects by offering grants. That's seed funding to get people to travel back and forth between different regions of the world. We're doing that right now with Iran. So these initiatives are small scale at first, but they nucleate specific projects. They get faculty working together between universities in these countries.
And members of the Rutgers community agree that these initiatives that encourage exchange between Iran and the U.S. lead to mutual understanding.
When we wonder what benefit we have from closer academic ties with Iran, the answer is quite simple. Iranians have been coming to America for decades, maybe even 100 years, because there's a great thirst for American education in Iran. And that's exemplified by the fact that so many Iranian cabinet members have American PhDs, including their foreign minister, Ambassador Javad Zarif. So I think this is a relationship that can only benefit Rutgers.
Aki, this relationship between Iran and Rutgers University is pretty extraordinary.
It is, Bruno. Rutgers is one of the few institutions in North America that focuses on Iran and some of its Middle Eastern programs.
Thanks, Aki. Rutgers continues its global health mission and outreach efforts to countries throughout the world.
Undergraduate student and reporter Preeta Sinha is here to tell us about our expanding ties with Tanzania.
Thanks, Bruno. Rutgers recently established official partnerships in Tanzania. Here's a look at how those relationships are developing. Rutgers experts have conducted extensive research in Tanzania. Faculty have zeroed in on underlying cultural and political forces shaping the country.
I was visiting a friend in Tanzania in 1985. I had a ticket for 3 months, but ended up staying for 3 years. And my primary job was working with this community development organization in this area where people who call themselves Maasai pastoralists live. My recent work has been looking at a series of collective protests that Maasai women have organized against the state.
I recently completed a book called Africa After Apartheid, South Africa, Race and Nation in Tanzania. In the early 1990s, when apartheid was officially dismantled, South Africa, for the first time in many decades, was free to move out onto the continent. And South African firms gradually acquired controlling interests in Tanzania's prized national economic assets. This was really hard for Tanzanians to fathom.
In 2014, a high-profile visit to Rutgers catalyzed the university's relationship with Tanzania.
The president of Tanzania, Kikwete, visited us. That helped develop several new relationships with the University of Dodoma.
The Gaia Centers offered a round of grants. We called it the Tanzania Seed Grant to encourage faculty to develop collaborations with colleagues at not just the University of Dodoma, but other institutions in Tanzania as well.
The seed grants have galvanized several collaborations.
In May of 2016, Dr. Willett brought 10 nursing students from Rutgers to visit University of Dodoma in Tanzania to have a 2 weeks curriculum. It's 4 more study abroad credit for the students.
Our first visit, we saw that we needed to do something around simulation. Simulators provide an opportunity to do procedures on something that's not alive.
With Gaia support, we will be able to work with Rutgers partner university in Dodoma, Tanzania. We would like to basically show them what we are doing in Uganda on air pollution research and then expand into Tanzania.
Rutgers research and programs in Tanzania are helping improve lives.
In sub-Saharan Africa, the consumption of fruits and vegetables is very, very low. We are working together in supporting and strengthening the program on African indigenous vegetables. And we're looking for vegetables considered to be nutrient rich, and then focus on those because then we know in these countries They are acceptable, they're consumed.
And at other times, it has been members of the Rutgers community who come back from Tanzania transformed.
I've benefited from the International Leadership Exchange to Tanzania immensely. I can talk for days about how it's really shaped me as a woman and as a citizen of the world.
From the health of our people to the health of our planet, check out this trailer for Antarctic Edge.
We have a sea level disaster facing us.
It's a hard job. It's 24/7. It is an extreme environment. It's a very harsh place to work. It's a very dangerous place to work.
The big danger is that you get trapped in the ice. On one of my first cruises, we ended up being stuck in the ice for an entire month.
This is about science. We're right at the heart of some of the largest climate change on Earth. We're right there at ground zero.
In my lifetime, that whole area of Earth has changed. The winter sea ice season is 90 days shorter.
They likely won't make it through the first winter.
There is a complete sense of responsibility. We can't mess this up.
I'm not sure we're going to make it.
Joining us is Dr. Oscar Schofield, Professor of Biooptical Oceanography and Chair of the Department of Marine and Coastal Sciences here at Rutgers. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Dr. Schofield, we just saw the trailer for Antarctic Edge, and it looks pretty dangerous out there, so why take the risk?
Because if you want to go study extreme locations on the planet, by virtue of that, you're going to go to places that are remote, usually pretty harsh, and while it can be dangerous and you have to be careful, exploring the planet is a lot more fun, and that's what I focus on. Yeah.
What are your studies revealing about the ocean, and why is this so important?
So the ocean is really important for controlling the climate of the planet, and the ocean's warming. As the ocean warms, you'll melt ice caps, and that raises sea level. So even though you might be melting glaciers in Antarctica, it has a big impact on New Jersey, for example, because sea level is going to rise, and then when we have storms, the surge and everything is much worse than it would have been in the past.
And how important is plankton?
Plankton are the plants of the ocean, or the forests of the sea. They're really small. So a tree in the ocean is about 50 microns, but they produce half the oxygen of the earth, so we rely on them for breathing, and all the life in the planet, in the ocean, rely on these small single-cell plants.
And how does the ocean's health impact humanity?
So a good example is if your ocean is going to a different place, you might not have fish that you want to eat. So one is commerce. It affects how much oxygen is in the atmosphere. And the main thing, way we'll feel it is how high is the sea level. So in the past, sometimes the sea level has covered 30% of New Jersey. You know, and so we know that the sea level is going to rise over the next, 10, 20, 100 years, and we have a lot of beach communities, and that's going to have a big impact on them.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
The feature film documentary Antarctic Edge 70 Degrees was made by Rutgers University professors and students in the Mason Gross School of the Arts Center for Digital Filmmaking.
It's the only film made by Rutgers to receive a theatrical release. From Antarctica to closer to home, here's Tara Reid with a look at Rutgers' relationships with one of our neighbors.
Thanks, Bruno. In December 2014, President Obama announced that the United States would begin to loosen restrictions when it comes to Cuba. Here's what that means to us.
It was an historic moment for U.S.-Cuba relations.
Today, the United States of America is changing its relationship with the people of Cuba.
The message echoed loudly across Rutgers. Rutgers has had academic exchanges with Cuba for many years.
We signed an agreement in 2002 to begin a collaboration between faculty from the University of Havana as well as students. That was really the first time.
We have a very active Cuba working group. Those schools that we're interacting with are not just in Havana, but they're in 3 or 4 cities in the far east and far west of the country.
The Gaia Centers built a multidisciplinary committee that explores ways to take this relationship even further.
Almost immediately after President Obama announced the beginning of normalization of U.S.-Cuba relations, we convened an ad hoc faculty committee. One of the outcomes of the committee meetings has been that we can learn a lot from Cuba and would like to focus energy on a structured kind of visiting scholar program.
The university has taken several steps to strengthen its connections to Cuba.
In 2015, we participated in a study tour to Cuba, sponsored by the Institute for International Education. The study tour introduced us to new potential partners, as well as allowed us to network with existing partners.
And these efforts have bolstered study abroad programs led by faculty from across Rutgers.
The Cuba Study Abroad is an effort to bring graduate students and advanced undergraduates to Cuba and introduce them to the master works of Cuban literature and cinema.
With the recent opening up of Cuba, we are developing programs there, including a program that will look at sort of comparative health systems in the two countries.
We're really trying to put together a class to really explore Cuba and what we think will happen as they emerge into the U.S. market.
So we took the trip to Cuba during spring break, looking at the whole idea of sustainable development and community development in the whole Havana city.
On our last visit to Cuba, we've talked with the program director of surgery and the hospital directors at a major university in Havana. They are interested in teaming with Rutgers that will afford Rutgers medical students for the first time to visit Cuba with surgical responsibility in learning and surgical responsibilities in research.
On campus, global events and programs related to Cuba continue to flourish.
Thanks to the support of Gaia, we were able to get a grant to sponsor symposiums to bring a lecture series of Cuban experts.
One of the graduate students in the Department of History received a full-year Mellon-funded grant to do research in Cuba. He'll be working in historical archives that actually are endangered.
And many feel that sustaining academic ties with Cuba enriches the Rutgers learning and teaching experience.
People in Cuba are ready for this, what we call a democracy. Young people want a partnership with the United States, want to study here, want to go back. They all are ready. We're just waiting for another step.
We recently sat down with Dr. Eric Garfunkel, Vice President for International and Global Affairs, to talk about Rutgers' global future and its many opportunities for international collaboration.
Here's what Dr. Garfunkel had to say. Dr. Garfunkel, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Very happy to be here.
We've spent this 6-episode program exploring Rutgers and its partners around the world. As head of the Gaia Centers, what's next for Rutgers?
Well, we have about 350 active partnerships right now. About 2/3 of them are research related and 1/3 academic exchanges. So we have new academic exchanges coming with Indonesia, with Peru, with Colombia, with Mexico, with Africa, and with Cuba. For example, with Cuba, we have Professor Gloria Bonillo Santiago, who's been involved for 20 years, who's leading the way. She's from Rutgers Camden. And with Africa, we have new initiatives in Ghana, in Ethiopia, and extensively in South Africa.
And what is the Fulbright program?
The Fulbright program is a program funded by the U.S. government for many years. Fulbright is one of the cases where we have students and faculty who either come to Rutgers and study and work in Rutgers, or to go abroad for either study or research experience. We have approximately 20 students per year coming to Rutgers and going from Rutgers abroad, and about 10 faculty per year either coming to Rutgers or going abroad from Rutgers that are funded by the Fulbright grants.
And with the Peace Corps, how are we beginning to strengthen our relationship, and how can students get involved?
With the Peace Corps, we've been involved since it was formed in 1961. A Peace Corps program, that's a 27-month program, and they can go virtually anywhere in the world that the Peace Corps has activities going on. Students who have already done study abroad or a service learning program abroad already have a sort of a jump on a Peace Corps-like experience. They know how to live and work abroad. It's a wonderful experience for a student and a great thing to have on your resume for your future career.
And are scholarships available for study abroad?
Scholarships are available for study abroad. We have the most common one is actually for students who are on Pell Grant who need support to come to Rutgers. They can get what's called a Gilman Grant, and that's a supplement from the U.S. Department of state to fund their academic experience overseas.
And how can alumni like myself get involved in a global Rutgers?
Alumni can get involved in several ways. If you're here in New Jersey or in the U.S., you can join or form an association, an alumni association in your region. We have the Alumni Association run through the Rutgers University Foundation, which helps organize those. You can join one of our tours around the world. And if you're an international student or former international student who's living and working abroad, you can get involved abroad in several different ways. And my colleague Andy Germack, who works with the Foundation and Alumni Association, he would be a perfect one for you to contact to see how you can do an event. You can either participate and interact directly with us at the Gaia Centers, or you can form a local alumni association. Another way, if you're domestic, whether you're a former international student or born and raised in America, that you can get involved, is to host some of our international students here. As you know, we have 7,500 international students currently at Rutgers. You can host them for a Thanksgiving event, a 4th of July event, and we do those regularly. We help organize those regularly now.
Dr. Garfunkel, thank you so much for being here with us today.
You're welcome.
That concludes this final episode of Rutgers Around the World. Well, it's been fun.
I can't believe it's over. We've had so much fun talking about everything from the Peace Corps at Rutgers to study abroad.
Service learning in Africa, to global health projects in Latin America, to decades-long institutional partnerships. The opportunities are incredible.
I hope everyone takes advantage of all that Rutgers has to offer. I'm Gabriela Milian.
And I'm Bruno Ferreira. Thanks for watching.